don't try to press your will onto other people and say something like, oh, if you don't like a 1911, you're a wuss. If you don't like a Glock, you have no idea what quality is. If you don't like the 1911, you must be a Nazi. If you don't like the Glock, well then shoot, you must be dating your sister. Whatever your argument is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, as a community, we all come together and hate Chiappa. Ah yes, the age-old question, 1911 or a Glock? Which should you choose, which is better for you, and which one do I personally prefer? Today on the Jiminy Show, we are going to find out. This is an age-old question. It's a question that a lot of people have asked. Nobody really knows the correct answer because, quite frankly, and this is a TLDR, there is no right answer. For some people, a 1911 is the correct gun. For some people, the Glock is a correct gun. We are going to take a look at both. We're going to talk about the obvious differences and what each one means to me as a shooter, as well as what it could potentially mean to you as a buyer. I just had everything set out so you can see some of the ammo differences. Number one, today we are comparing my Para Ordnance 1911 Expert in stainless steel 45 ACP to a Glock 17. This is the full-size 9mm. In my opinion, this is the most competent comparison. I could be comparing something like a Glock 43 to the 1911, thus crippling the Glock, or I could be comparing a 9mm 1911 to the Glock, which then again is skewing the results. In my opinion, as a full-size gun owner and enthusiast, this is the optimal thing. I'm going to go ahead and get the ammo and the magazines out of here. I just had them in the frame for a picture. First major difference is the caliber that these guns fire. Again, the 1911 is a 45 ACP. It's a typically 230 grain bullet. The ones I have in this gun right now are 185 grain hollow points, which means they are going to be cooking a little bit faster. These ones are made by Double Tap and they go a little over 1,300 feet per second out of a 5-inch barrel. Typical round for a Glock 17 is a 9x19 or 9mm Parabellum. This is a 124 grain bonded defense jacketed hollow point. It's also rated at 1,300 feet per second, and it's made for 4.5 to 5-inch barrels, which this one is. I think this is a 4.7-inch barrel. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I don't deal with this full size too much. As you can see, there is an obvious difference in the size of the rounds. Some people will say having a bigger round is better. Some people will say having more rounds is better. Here's my opinion on that. Doesn't matter if you have 100 rounds if you aren't hitting what you're aiming at. If you have 10 rounds of 45 and you put 10 rounds on the target, and you have 100 rounds of 9 and you only put 10 rounds on the target, same effect. Now that all the ammo is off the table, I will go ahead and clear each firearm by opening the slide, showing you there's nothing in it. No magazine, nothing in the chamber. Same with the 1911. Pull it back, lock it open. Nothing in the mag well, nothing in the chamber. So I can now drop both slides. So these guns represent two completely different mindsets when it comes to the pistol. This one is the older design. Obviously, this one has some upgrades to it to make it more compliant with today's aesthetics, but it's basically the same gun that was adopted by the US military. It is hammer fired. It has a bunch of safeties externally. External manual safety, grip safety. This one has a Series 80 trigger system, so it does have an internal drop safety. And it's just, to me, a beautiful piece of history that's been updated and made more current throughout the ages. This gun represents, I guess, the beginning of what we consider the modern pistol. The Wonder 9s or the Polymer Wonders, however you want to refer to it, because this is a Austrian designed, Austrian built, 9mm double stack 17+1 polymer frame steel slide striker fired pistol, with no external safeties other than the trigger safety. And it does have a drop safety as well. So this represents what some people would call today's thinking. Personal opinion time. I prefer this one over this one. Personal opinion. In terms of design, in terms of materials, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of appeal, if you put these two on a shelf together, this one will always get more looks than this one. On the flip side of that, this one will outsell this one by a fair margin. Next up is a subject I absolutely hate talking about on video because the comment section fills with people that have opinions, and opinions are great except for when you insist they're fact. Price. Yes, that's right, we're going to talk about price. Prices vary from area to area, from store to store, from retailer to retailer, online, brick and mortar, doesn't matter. Somebody out there will either find it for way less or will have to pay way more. I'm not here to debate that argument. The only thing we're talking about is the typical prices of these two firearms. A Glock 17, be it a Gen 4 or a Gen 5, will never, with a caveat, cost more than a quality 1911. And that's the caveat. A quality 1911. Even an entry-level 1911 is close to the price of a Glock. However, one like this Para Ordnance, when this gun was new in 2014, this gun cost $750. When this gun was new, it cost $448. If you walk into a gun store right now and you pick up one of these exact same experts in stainless, you will be hard-pressed to find one for less than $650. If you do, it will be in very rough condition or missing parts. If you walk into a gun store right now, you're going to find a Glock 17 for anywhere from $300 to $400, depending on sights and condition of it. And again, your mileage may vary, but that's what we typically see. If it's got 10,000 rounds and a lot of wear on the barrel and stuff, it's in a low end. If it's pristine and has 50 rounds through it, they bring dang near MSRP. So you would automatically think that this is the better buy because this isn't worth as much. Another caveat to that. This appeals to more people than this specific gun. A stainless steel Para Ordnance 1911 only appeals to people like me and people that want a stainless steel 1911. So your market for selling this gun at $650 is a lot less than the market for selling a bone stock Glock. Obviously, we could talk about companies like Zev Technologies or Terran Tactical or Vickers Tactical or Dan Wesson, Les Bear, Ed Brown. We could talk all day long about the aftermarket modifiers, builders, whatnot, and sky's the limit when it comes to money. We're not going to do that today. We're still just talking about stock pistols. Next, let's talk about the feel of each pistol. This is subjective, but it's a lot of things are shared between different people. Number one, this is a double stack 9mm. So this is the magazine for it. It's just like the Glock. It's chunky, basic, nothing special. The 1911 is a single stack. This is a Smith & Wesson 8-round flush-sided magazine to fit with my magwell. That alone will tell you there's going to be a difference in the way the grips feel. And there is. And there should be. A double stack 1911 will feel more closely like this gun. For a man of slightly above average hand size, this thing fits me pretty darn nicely. My hand comes around. Obviously, I still have room there for my other pad, so that's good. And, you know, it falls pretty naturally to hand when I'm going for my sight picture. The 1911 with its single stack actually falls a little bit better to hand for me. But that's also because the first gun I ever owned was a 1911, and I practiced on 1911s. This one could be made slightly thinner by removing the extended beaver tail, but I like to have the extended beaver tail, even though, as you can see, I rarely ever have to deal with the horrible slide bite problems that people have, because, as you can see, it doesn't come back far enough over my hand to give me any kind of slide bite. And it gives me a little bit more of a 1911 grip. And as you can see, I also don't have that problem with 1911s because I don't have what I like to call well-proportioned hands. Triggers, completely different things. Obviously, this is a striker-fired gun, this is a hammer-fired gun. Let's start with the Glock. The Glock has a trigger safety. You have to depress the middle of the trigger in order to make the gun function. If you don't, you can't pull the trigger back. But when you do, it's pretty crisp. It's pretty standard for a Glock. It's got nothing special to write home about in its stock form. When you come out to your release, you can hear it pop. There you go. So your reset isn't terrible. It's about 70% of the way out. So, I mean, if you learn where the reset is, you can actually run it pretty well. The trigger on the 1911, however, is considered a much better trigger. Say what you want about the gun, being an old design, whatever the case, triggers on 1911s are usually touted as being much, much better than their polymer striker-fired counterparts. As far as I know, it's at its stock setting because it's perfectly good for me. This trigger comes in at just over 3 pounds, meaning very light activation, no real over travel once the gun fires, and the reset is super short. Right there. And then you go right back in. You can see how little travel there is. Shoots, no over travel. So from a out-of-the-box perspective, I prefer the 1911 trigger. In terms of basic controls, mag release is in the same spot on both handguns. This one is flatter than this one, but again, that's changeable. Slide stops do the same job on both guns. They can release the slide as well as lock it open. However, this one again is flush mounted. This one is a slightly larger than original stock piece. Sticks out farther, makes it a little bit easier to manipulate. And this one, of course, has an external rear safety, which is a thumb safety for those of you not familiar. I could do an entire video just on the opinions of people when it comes to external safeties or no external safeties. I'm fine either way. I've owned both, I've run both, I've carried both. I don't really care either way. Now I know there's some people that will tout, oh, you may forget to sweep off the safety. In an emergency, you're pulling and you can't do that. Or you'll forget to do that. Yeah, that's a possibility, but that's an exception, not the rule. There are people out there that may grab this thing in a panic and short stroke the trigger thinking they got enough of their pad on it and it won't fire. If you want to talk about outliers, again, we could do that all day. We're not going to do that. Another questionable comparison, because you can change sights on both of these handguns and usually get exactly what you want. This one has its stock sights on it because my buddy at work didn't have time to swap out for the Trijicon that was on it originally. When it came in, it had a Trijicon night sight on it, and after I decided to purchase it, I want those sights, so they're going to put them back on. But the stock sights are not terrible. We all know how I feel about markings on the rear sight. I don't think they're necessary, and in fact, when you're doing something like this and you're trying to line up a front sight with a U, in my opinion, other than target shooting, that serves no purpose. For speed shooting, I'd rather have one well-defined front sight and a blacked out rear, such as this. And in fact, the sights that were originally on that were Trijicon night sight front, blacked out rear. And that's what I prefer. This one has a fiber optic front and a blacked out rear. This is a factory sight for this gun. However, it's not usually typical for a 1911. Usually they'll have a basic doved in rear sight and a doved in blade, unless it's a really old gun and then it'll be pinned or welded in. And that's perfectly fine for me because this gun proves my point. This gun was originally intended to be a out of the box, take it to the range, take it to a competition and shoot. So the rear sight has no markings. It's also a basic rear sight. If your gun is zeroed in at the factory, you should be able to work with that. And I can. I'm very accurate with this gun. We're not going to go into a debate of stopping power. Now I know some of you are going to go, why didn't you use a Glock 21 and a 1911? Because a Glock 21 is also chambered in 45 and carries 13 rounds in its mag. That wasn't the point of this video. I just wanted to talk about two different styles of gun. If I really wanted to do an apples to apples comparison, I would have done that. In fact, I would have grabbed a double stack 1911 and a Glock 21 were that the case. Let's talk about accessories and things you can do to the gun. Obviously, you could change this entire lower. You'd have to get a serialized one, but like Grey Ghost Tactical, again, Vickers, Zev, Arsenal, a bunch of companies make entire slides, frames. You can change the entire gun if you really, really wanted to. And some people do that. Some people will just redo the stippling to make it much more aggressive, something like a Smith & Wesson or a Springfield XD style checkering. This particular 1911 is a government model, 5-inch stainless steel, of course, but otherwise basically the body, the slide, is all exactly like a government issued A1 because it does have the relief cut for the thumb there. So no rail, although they do make them with rails, and you can then mount lights and lasers just as you would the Glock. This particular one has a couple of add-ons. It has Hogue grips on it just because I don't like my hands being chewed up by hard plastic grips. I know that's kind of axiomatic to say because this is just a hard plastic grip, but you know, I can get used to that if I have to, or put a Hogue soft grip on it. It also has a Wilson Combat magwell on it. Supposedly makes for faster loading and unloading of the firearm. Whether it is or not, I don't really know. I also just think it kind of looks cooler on the bottom of the gun. In terms of takedown, a Glock will come apart much easier than a 1911. You literally pull it back, you drop your 2 tabs, pull your trigger, bingo. 1911, a little bit more of a pain in the butt ski. You have to take this and do this, and you have to slide your bushing over and hope that doesn't fly into the ceiling like it can and has on me on several occasions. And then you come over here, you got to take your barrel bushing out, and you drop this, you pull this back, take that out, and then at that point, there you go. In the real world, when you're at home just watching TV, watching YouTube, watching me, don't forget to subscribe, you can just take apart your gun at your leisure and field strip it down and clean it and make it look all fancy dancy and all that good stuff like I like to. So in a slow environment, not much difference. But if you're out in the woods and you're on a hunt or a walk or a stalk or whatever and you need to clean your gun because you've been practicing, got it dirty, this is a little bit easier because it has a captive recoil spring as well as just a few parts versus this one, which you saw when I took the slide off, my guide rod fell out because it's only a half length. So yeah, in terms of complexity, this takes longer to clean than this. I wouldn't say that it's like a 9 out of 10 on the hardness scale. It's more like a 3 out of 10, and this is a 1.5. So you're not talking about that much of a difference. Except now I have to reassemble them. Glock. Reassembled. I am being a little bit funny because obviously I didn't take the barrel out of the other gun, but this is basically what you have to do to reassemble a 1911. Lots of patience. How you doing? While I'm doing this, don't forget to check out some of my other videos. I only have 650 on the channel, so I hope you'll be able to find something else to watch, such as video game pickups, other gun videos, at the range videos, you know, just the typical, all that good stuff. Alright, I think I killed enough time with that, don't you? Now it's time for an unpopular part of the video, and that's where I give my conclusion to what I think is the better gun. I'm a 1911 guy. I'm not going to hide that. I prefer the 1911. I prefer the weight of it. I like an all-steel frame. I like an all-steel gun. I prefer the trigger in a 1911 over a Glock. However, that doesn't mean I don't like the Glock. The Glock is a very nice piece. It's an awesome carry piece. It is an excellent shooter. Reliability over the history of Glock has been excellent. So those things taken into consideration makes this an excellent pistol as well. It's just I personally prefer the 1911. Hopefully that's not going to make too many of you scream in the comments about, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And that brings me to another subject. What's best for me may not be best for you. There are people out there that adamantly don't like full-size guns, period. And again, these are both full-size guns. There are people out there that hate 45 caliber. I don't know why anybody hates any caliber, but there are people out there that say 45 caliber is an overrated caliber, it doesn't need to exist, it's an old round, blah, 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 blah. There's people out there that will say the exact same thing about 9mm. Oh, you don't need it, it's not powerful enough, you have to carry 10 times more rounds, blah, 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 blah. To each of those groups, I would say, please get a life. And I would also question whether or not any of you have actually ever owned a firearm. So if you like this kind of video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, check out the playlists where I have all kinds of gun videos. I will be posting next after this one, the video of these guns at the range. As you're perusing around, don't forget to scroll down and use the links to Amazon and Liberty Arms where you can get a discount by using the code, as well as subscribing to the channel. Subscribing to the channel is what's going to allow me to keep doing things like this. Getting different firearms to test, upgrading different firearms, or if you would prefer to see something else, I'm also going to be getting back into doing tech, video games, and cars as well, so look forward to that. Gun videos will stay Monday and Friday. Other videos will be interspersed during the week. With your help and your commitment and possibly your donations, I will be able to do a video every day on different subjects. If that happens, I'll keep you updated. I hope you guys have a great week. I will see you guys next week with another gun video, and as always, I'll talk to you later.